Patrick, it's good to talk to you, man. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, it's good to be on with you, Ryan. I'm glad we get a chance to connect here in Hoover, and right now it feels a little calmer than usual. So I don't know what's going on, but we're just excited to be here again.
Well, we've been talking about this. Kind of funny that you brought this up, because here's the crazy part. Now, Alabama fans, we have this blinders on that we're in one of the greatest dynasties this game's ever seen. But for the rest of the other 13 teams, we've been asking the question for the first 97 minutes of our program, has Nick Saban bored the rest of the league? Has he made this boring? It's a fair question.
Yeah, he certainly obviously set the bar a little bit high in Tuscaloosa, and I think when you really look at it, it's not that Saban has really elevated Alabama to unreachable heights. It's that he's just made that gap so big, but he's kind of, more so than improving Alabama, he's really lowered the rest of the league because they're all just playing for second at this point. And so, aspirations need to be higher. These coaches, Steve Spurrier not being here this year is a little bit different, but, Steve Spurrier doesn't want to spend his entire life in the office chasing what Coach Saban is doing, because we all know that he and his staff are complete workaholics. You look at Coach Kiffin going to FAU. A little birdie down there in FAU told me that, hey, by 2 p.m., Lane Kiffin's out of there and he's already on the golf course or beach or whatever you can do in Boca Raton. So, the drive that Coach Saban comes to work with every day certainly does. It can take a wear and tear on all of his opponents for sure.
Yeah, and the crazy part, and I know he spent a couple of weeks at Lake Burton here recently. We track Nick Saban like a spy, and with our job. But generally, you can go by there when he's not on vacation, and he doesn't spend a lot of time away from Tuscaloosa because he's had camps. He had a big small camp, a lot of recruits in. He had the little guys camp, little 8, 9, 10-year-olds running around. But you can go by, and I kid you not, at 10 o'clock at night on a June evening, and the white Mercedes is still there. That's unhuman to be able to have that drive in the offseason. Everybody can do it September, October, but to do it in June is a drive that most people don't have.
It's awesome. Obviously my boss at the Reese Senior Bowl, Phil Savage, has written a book on his inside look at Nick Saban. I actually was the proofreader for it, one of many proofreaders for it. So I read the entire thing. Don't tell Phil I caught a few typos here and there.
Okay.
But certainly the book comes out in August. And
I'm excited.
It's called 4th and Goal Every Day. The Alabama's Relentless Pursuit for Perfection, I believe, is the subtitle of the book. It comes out in August. Phil would want me to say it's available on pre-order on Amazon and all that nonsense.
And you can save money. You can save money, by the way, if you do that.
Absolutely. If you don't pre-order it, you got to pay $29.99
right.
for it.
Yeah, you save like $10, $8, $9. Yeah.
But like I said, Ryan, I've already gotten an inside read at the book, and it certainly is very telling on the drive and the determination of Coach Saban, going all the way back to his Cleveland Browns years. And, one thing is that he learns from his mistakes. People think that he's invincible. He's really not. We're all human. Even all of these SEC football coaches that make a lot of money, they're all human. Everybody makes their mistakes, but Coach Saban always learns from his mistakes. And my favorite story, and I actually knew this anecdote before it was in the book, but just to give you a little precursor of what's in the book, is when Phil met Coach Saban for the first time, it was in Cleveland when Saban was the defensive coordinator, and he was watching film of Aeneas Williams, who obviously is an NFL Hall of Famer. And Phil said, "Hey, Coach, who are you watching?" And Saban says, some guy who can't play. And it turns out that Aeneas Williams goes on to have a Hall of Fame career out of Southern University, ended up being a keynote speaker at the Reese Senior Bowl player banquet. But that, I'm sure, haunts Coach Saban to this day, missing on that player. So he learns from every mistake that he's ever made. And of course, another anecdote is that when they're on their way to the White House, Coach Saban has the first 4 opponents of the upcoming season already queued up on his computer, and he's already preparing for the next season, the first 4 opponents on their way to the White House to celebrate a national championship. It never ends, and, it can go both ways. You can really admire it, or you can say, oh, man, he's just doing way too much.
So, and this is the question. Maybe Phil Savage could help us, because he knows Nick Saban and probably a lot better than we do, is how long can he keep doing this? How long can he continue to go? And because I just don't see him one of those guys that can do this halfway. He's either all or nothing. How long can he go?
The interesting thing to look at when we talk about that question is when he does some of these off-season all-access things with SEC Network or whatever outlet it is, where he's out at his lake house and he seems so relaxed and, he's showing off the boats and the jet skis and all the fun things he's got at the lake house. It's like, man, he looks like he's so comfortable not working, which is kind of hard for us as outsiders to fathom. So it seems like that he does get away and enjoys his quality life at the lake house with his family. So because he seems so comfortable and like 100% away when he is away, I think that kind of re-energizes him just enough to say, okay, I have a nice balance right now.
Right.
So I don't need to worry about trying to make time for other things outside of football because I already have a perfect balance. I'm happy when I'm home and I'm happy when I'm at work. And it's not changing for him anytime soon.
Yeah, Ivan Maisel wrote an article last summer from ESPN, which is from the Mobile area that I know wrote about that balance, that Nick Saban has found some of that. And for someone who has covered Nick Saban for every year that he's been in Tuscaloosa, he's a different type of character now. There's a lot of things that stays the same, but I see a different Nick Saban than what I did when he first got off the plane in 2007.
Yeah, and I think just throughout this scouting venture of meeting people at a lot of different schools that have worked with Coach Saban at one point or another, whether it was on the coaching staff or support staff or athletic training or whatnot, they all will tell you this is not the same man that we worked with 5, 10, 15 years ago, and that's been a biggest strength for him is his ability to adapt. I mean, it's not easy to continue to connect, and the way that he's recruiting, it's not easy to continue to connect with these 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And he's doing a phenomenal job of it. Obviously, he's got a very good product to sell, but I think he does a good job of connecting with the player, where the player says, okay, I'm not going just because you've won national championship, you put players in the pro. I'm going because I respect what you stand for as a man, a husband, a football coach, father figure, whatever it may be, because it's not easy to relate. I mean, I go back to Art Briles at Baylor. Obviously, he's not there anymore, but he and I have had a lot of communication because we've had a lot of prospects from Baylor. And I was taken aback when Coach Briles is texting me back in all emojis. And that's what some people have to do to relate to these youngsters now. Well, I guarantee you Coach Saban's not texting anybody with any emojis, yet he still has this special connection with these youngsters, and he excels at that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, we're talking about a guy that if he signed up tomorrow, he'd have 500,000 followers on Twitter, and he's not on Twitter. I mean, he's not on Twitter. That's hard for you and I to imagine, because I bet you there's not 10 minutes in the day that does not go by that I don't look at Twitter.
Oh, I'm right there with you, Ryan. But see, he does not have to be out there on social media to be cool. He doesn't have to do anything flashy. All he needs to do is show up to be cool, because I think a lot of people just respect the fact that he will take the time out of whatever it is that he needs to do that day or wants to do that day to show up to support certain ventures that are important to him, because he certainly doesn't need to do that. He's not contractually obligated to have his kids' foundation where he comes down to Mobile for the Team Focus event every year with Mike Godfrey to do a meet and greet. He's not obligated to do any of that, but he does it out of the goodwill of his heart because it's important to him. And we were talking about earlier in this conversation, Ryan, he's working all the time. So just the fact that he'll take some time away from that for things that are important to him, that's what makes him cool to these outsiders, the fact that he even takes the time.
What is different about his player development in Tuscaloosa? Because you get to a chance to evaluate that with your job at the Reese's Senior Bowl there in Mobile. What is it about his player development side of things that he excels in?
Well, he really cares, and he's very hands-on. Obviously, we know he's got his specialties with the defensive backs, but he is not a CEO. You know, he's out there very active in practice. I love listening to Phil come back and tell me every time he goes up to Tuscaloosa to see an Alabama practice, there's no music in Tuscaloosa during these practices.
None.
You've probably experienced that, Ryan, where all of these other teams want to have the flashy music, get the energy going. Coach Saban brings a natural energy. You know, just stepping in near his presence just creates kind of a jolt in your body that says, okay, it's time to go to work, and it's time to go to work at the highest level. So the fact that he really cares and he brings genuine energy, he doesn't have to produce anything. It all comes naturally because of the standards that he set and kind of the aura that surrounds him.
Yeah, I mean, you could hear his voice all over campus. I mean, when I walked in March the 21st of this year, because I wanted to see the tone after losing a national championship, how would he be? First voice I hear when I walk into the football complex in the practice facility was Nick Saban screaming at the top of his lungs. I'm like, he's fine. He's fine.
Ryan, I've been to some college campuses. I've been to some practices where it's pregame stretch and the music hadn't gotten cranking yet, and you'll hear a player blurt out, "Hi, Coach, can we get some music going?" But, I guarantee you there aren't any Alabama players asking for any music because they have so much respect for Coach Saban. They want to hear his voice more so than they want to hear any music. You can go listen to music when you get out of the facility, right? Put your headphones on, walk around campus. But when it's go time, you want to hear what Coach Saban has to say.
All right, so looking at Alabama right now as we are about 54 days away, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Credit Union. When you look at Alabama, what's your biggest question you have around this team?
Well, I think it's the overall depth of the front seven. Obviously, this is the SEC, so as cliche as it sounds, you win in the trenches. On offense, the offensive line has to be good. On defense, your front seven has to be good. Alabama's had, obviously, one of the best front sevens of this decade, but can they continue to reload? Deshaun Hand finally needs to live up to his five-star hype as a senior, but the reality is maybe it's too early to say this because he's got a season to play, but right now the reality is he's not Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen was a special talent. Sean Dion Hamilton expected to play a solid role here as a senior, but the reality is, with all due respect to him, he's not Reuben Foster. Reuben Foster was a special talent. So does Alabama have enough to fill the void that these, quote, special talents have left behind? You always know they're going to be the most talented team in the country. They're obviously going to be the preseason #1 team, but can they fill the void that are left by these special talents? Because it's not like they just lost a bunch of draft picks. They lost a bunch of very high draft picks. Can Marlon Humphrey be easily replaced? Is Tony Brown going to slide outside, or is Trayvon Diggs going to make the adjustment to corner from the wide receiver position? I do like the transition that Trayvon Diggs has made, though. He does give them a lot of length that I know Coach Saban likes in his DBs. He's got an NFL body in terms of playing that position of cornerback. What role is Minkah Fitzpatrick going to play? Is he going to be the safety, or is he going to be a corner? Is he going to play the star? I think there are just some questions to answer in terms of who's going to play what role on defense to replace what they lost.
Well, go back to Trayvon Diggs. I mean, I know this is crazy, and I know Nick Saban's looked at this roster a million times. The media guide that we got today, Trayvon Diggs is listed as a wide receiver. Now, I know that could be a simple, guy just missed it and hasn't changed it. But, I mean, things like that, when I know Nick Saban's attention to detail, it makes me go, are they going to keep him there? You know what I mean? I mean, it's because the guy can play a lot of different positions. But, was that just an experiment in spring? Do they move him back? What do they do with a guy like Trayvon Diggs? And, it's a luxury when you can have the defensive backs that can put those guys on the island and lock those guys down.
No, it certainly is. And in my opinion, I think that he's headed towards being a corner full-time. But if he's still listed as a wide receiver in the media guide, I mean, I'm sure Coach Saban's the last thing. If there's one thing he's not worried about, I'm sure it's the media guide.
Yeah.
But certainly I thought Trayvon Diggs had a good spring in this at corner. And but he's one of the best athletes on the team. And one thing that we actually tell a lot of our youngsters going through the process here, getting into high school and college and all that, is, hey, there's a lot more money to be made as a corner because there are a lot of 6-foot wide receivers out there. You can find a 6-foot wide receiver in 4th, 5th, 6th round of the NFL draft, and not all of them are going to make it. You got to be really special to make it in the NFL as a first-round draft pick as a 6-foot or under wide receiver. But as a corner, 5'11", 5'11 and a half, 6 foot, 6'1", and you have length, you have ball skills. As being a former wide receiver, you can make plays on the ball. That's valuable. And I think that's something that Trayvon Diggs really has. I think he can add a lot, not only to the team, but to himself and his future prospects by going to the corner position.
Patrick Rue right now, scouting coordinator there at Reese's Senior Bowl. Let me go to this quarterback conversation. I don't call it a competition. I think it's Jalen Hurts' job until he finds a way to lose the job. If he does that, I think he'll be the starting quarterback to open up against Florida State. But let me ask you, how does Nick Saban manage this, in your opinion, with Tua Tagovailoa?
Well, I certainly think that he's going to get on the field in some capacity this year. I think the best part is that they're similar talents in terms of the skill sets, the mobility. I mean, Jalen Hurts was, 50 or so yards shy of being a 1,000-yard tailback, essentially. And Tua certainly obviously has that mobility as well. Obviously, this is Jalen's job to lose or job to hold on to, or however you want to refer to it, because he was just a true freshman last year. I think we lose sight of that because he was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. But it's the natural progression, especially in a program like Alabama, that you're naturally going to get better going into your second year as a starting quarterback. So I think this is Jalen's job. But Tua has been very impressive from everything that I've heard. Everybody that I've talked to says that this is a really impressive kid. I do think it's a different dynamic, the fact that he's left-handed, because the ball is going to come out a little bit different in terms of just having that chemistry with your receivers and certainly your offensive line as well. But I think there's going to be ways that Tua gets on the field this year. I think there'll be certain packages for him. I think there are certainly ways, maybe even around the goal line or short yardage situations, that you can use his mobility, his accuracy, his touch. I do think he's got a little bit more touch and accuracy than Jalen does. But again, naturally, Jalen should improve in that area going into year 2.
You spent a lot of time with Jalen Hurts down at the Manning Passing Academy. What was your take-home message?
Really enjoyed spending time with him. You know, he's built like a Mack truck, number one. I mean, he looks like a tailback. If you would have said, hey, this is a 1,000-yard running back, if you didn't know who he was, said, hey, that's a 1,000-yard rusher, you'd have been like, yeah, I could see that. But certainly from a quarterback standpoint, during Friday's workout in Thibodaux, he threw the ball much better. And obviously in the college football playoff, he missed some deep shots. It could have been a different game against Clemson if he was able to connect on some of those deep balls. But I do think that the deep ball is actually his best throw. He can really drop the ball on a dime in a bucket. He showcased that in Thibodaux. He obviously has to improve in the short yardage throws, the intermediate throws, and he actually looked very good doing that. He looked good throwing on the run in Thibodaux. Again, the natural progression to get better in your second year, and not only on the field, mentally as well, and how you prepare. Also being around the Mannings for a week and learning how to prepare, I think that's instrumental to off-the-field growth as well going into year 2. So to me, I'm excited to see what Jalen can do. The standard's obviously very high because he was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. The only improvement you can make off of that is the Heisman Trophy, and you don't want to put that kind of expectation on the kid, especially somebody who grows up as a coach's son who understands how important it is to be team first.
Going back to Jalen here for just a couple of minutes, when you look at the game, how much do you think it will slow down for him as far as, going through now? Because nobody taught him how to be an Alabama quarterback. This job in Tuscaloosa is it's unique. When you look at, Joe Namath has told me, he said, listen, there's no way I can describe the pressure to be the Alabama quarterback. To go through that, nobody taught him how to be the Alabama quarterback. He was thrown in that immediately. How much will the game slow down, and how much will all that now be, second thought to him?
Well, I think it'll slow down a lot with the new OC, Brian Daboll, because Daboll will be more of a teacher. There'll be more schemes, more shifts. There'll be more things for him to do at the line of scrimmage. I don't anticipate it to always be fast-paced, that entire up-tempo. Now, I anticipate them to keep some tempo involved in the game plan, but I don't think it's going to be as fast-paced as Coach Kiffin had it at times. I think Daboll will have some more formations, some more shifts, some more freedom for Jalen to kind of decipher things at the line of scrimmage. I think that's why it was really important for Jalen to be around Peyton Manning, to kind of learn how to command not only the huddle, but to command the line of scrimmage and see things before they happen. I think that will help slow things down a little bit, the fact that he should have a little bit more time at the line of scrimmage in between plays.